Last week, I did something radical. Instead of me playing in this event where 7 wins gets you 2 boxes of booster packs mailed to your house, I turned the keys to my channel fully over to my viewers. The point of my channel is to help a community of improvers all get better at Magic, Draft, and Sealed together to make you better at Magic tomorrow than you are today. So I said, let's put that to the test in a series that I called Splash Champs. I had 5 viewers come on my channel and play for a box with no assistance from me while I commentated. Unfortunately, in the 5 attempts, 0 boxes were won, but every single one of these 5 viewers taught me something new, ranging from concrete card evaluations, ways to play specific cards better in Marvel superheroes, to general approaches to the game. So today, I'm going to show you those 5 learnings that I'm confident will make you better as well. So the first one was a beautiful lesson in how to do combat better from a splash champ named DarthCorpulus. So I'm going to start one moment before the crucial moment, and I'm going to let me from the past narrate what's going on, which also, by the way, can come back next turn. So I think this is a spot where, look, you can get blown out if they have a kill spell and for your take up the shield. But I mean, at a certain point, they've had so much already, you just have to make them have that one extra thing. Okay, so the opponent does not have a combat trick because it looks like their thinking is play hero in training, dig for Helicarrier Strike. I guess if they had Helicarrier Strike, maybe they would play it the same way to make us think that they don't have something. So the question is, what do you do in this situation? Your opponent is attacking with a Winter Soldier Icy Assassin. This is a 5/3 Vigilance Menace because it has a Shield Spy Kit on it that is giving it +3/+1. DarthCorpulus is holding a Take Up the Shield. 1 and a white for an instant, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. And the crucial card that I'm thinking about is Helicarrier Strike. 1 mana for an instant, it deals 2 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. The only other card that the opponent could have here for their 1 untapped white mana is Panther Pounce, which is not relevant. So the line that I was thinking of just by default turned out to be wrong in a very important way. If you want to solve this puzzle for yourself, pause, think about what you would do. So the usual way that I would say the vast majority of experienced Magic players would approach the situation by default is to put it to the opponent to show you that they have the combat trick after blocks have been declared. So in other words, you attack me with your Winter Soldier. I would organize a double block, pass priority back to you, and say, essentially, do you have anything? Can you interrupt your Winter Soldier trading with my cards? At that point, you would expect the opponent to cast their Helicarrier Strike on your hero in training, and then bam, you get to take up the shield. Take up the shield resolves, hero in training is saved, and then essentially the Winter Soldier trades for Crowd of True Believers, you get some life gain, you blink their Helicarrier Strike. Awesome. The reason that people prefer to do it this way is you put it to your opponent to cast the Helicarrier Strike without knowing whether or not you have anything. Essentially, it gives you an opportunity to not just make an advantageous block, but also to take a card out of the opponent's hand by getting them to cast a Helicarrier Strike that's about to get blanked. However, it makes the crucial assumption that the opponent would actually play a Helicarrier Strike if you organize this block. In this case, note that the Winter Soldier did not even have a finality counter on it yet. We have equal cards in hand, 4 cards each, and the opponent is actually ahead on the board. They have bigger, better creatures and an extra equipment. So actually, it's extremely possible in this situation, I think very likely, that the opponent is fine with the trade. They just let the Winter Soldier kill both hero in training and Crowd of True Believers, and subsequently they'll bring it back to the battlefield. No harm done. He made the really wise decision to cast Take Up the Shield before declaring blockers. What that means is that hero in training is going to be a 3/3 indestructible by the time that we get into blocks. By the time it could be targeted by Helicarrier Strike, it could not be destroyed by Helicarrier Strike. If at that point the opponent Helicarrier Strikes Crowd of True Believers, we're perfectly happy because we've arranged a legal block on the Menace creature by double blocking it, and our hero in training can kill the Winter Soldier on its own. So essentially, we gave up a Crowd of True Believers compared to the best case scenario where they Helicarrier Strike our hero in training and we get to save it with Take Up the Shield. But that scenario was probably never going to happen anyways. So the learning that I take from this is if their combat trick could only be played in combat, maybe you should just stay out of combat. And this has come up several times subsequently in my games in the format, this exact situation with Take Up the Shield and Helicarrier Strike. And I actually made the right play where I would have made the wrong play. It made me concretely better. So thank you, DarthCorpulus. All right then, learning number 2. This one came to us from a splash champ named Axel. Things were looking pretty darn hopeless in one of the most dramatic games that I have seen of Marvel. We have 1 flying blocker, the Yellow Jacket, and we are facing down a shield deployment drone that's a 4/5. and things are about to get even worse for us in the air, and the opponent has a Raft security officer that can tap down our only blocker. So we're basically facing a lethal attack. In fact, I think if the opponent had had one more mana, we might have been straight up dead because they could have tapped down our Yellow Jacket, leveled up their Aerial Doombot, and attacked with 9 power. So I will let me from the past explain how things are looking. I don't know. Are we chumping? What's our out here? I'm not particularly sure. Aerial Doombot becomes a 5/5. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't attack with the Aerial Doombot. Doesn't totally make sense to me. So right here in the moment where we activate this Avengers Tower, I mean, you could be forgiven for just hitting the concede button. You're facing down one lethal attacker and one almost lethal attacker. The opponent has a Raft security officer that can tap down your only flyer. As a commentator who's been watching this game for 20 minutes at this point, probably, I can't even think of what our outs could possibly be. Either Avengers Tower needs to find us a hero that has flying, and I can't think of one that's in our deck, or we need to just top deck a flyer or a reach creature, and again, I can't think of a single one that's in our deck. And we need to deal with essentially 2 flyers, not just 1 flyer. So I think there are a lot of people who might just get discouraged and concede in this position. But now let's see what happens. Continuing to use all of his resources. Okay, the vision. All right. Okay, the vision had to take up the shield. So what do you know? It turns out that we did have a hero with flying in our deck. It was the Vision. I did not remember that that was a hero. So we didn't have to top deck it. We just needed the Vision to be in the top few cards so that Avengers Tower could find it. And then take up the shield is that extra little piece of life gain that means that Yellow Jacket, and indestructible by the way, that means that Yellow Jacket can survive a combat, gain us a little bit of life. And if we fast forward a little bit, Axel has actually managed to win a few combats in the air, stick a few flying blockers, get a whole bunch of life gain, which double strike plus lifelink will do for you with the Vision plus take out the shield, and puts enough pressure on his opponent to ultimately win through damage. So the learning that I take from that is something maybe a little trite, but something that I think we all need to hear, which is just do not concede. If you want to up your win rate, one of the first things that you can do is just forget that the concede button exists. There's gotta be 1 or 2% of games that you'll play, including in events for stakes, like with a box on the line. Okay, if you're in the standard unranked queues or whatever, concede to your heart's content. But if you want to raise your win rate, there's got to be 1 or 2% of games that feel completely unwinnable in the moment, which if you just pushed on, you would get one of those magic sequences of draws that turns things around. I was basically leaving Axel for dead, so were the viewers, so was Axel, but he wisely did not hit the concede button, got a magical sequence of draws, raised his life total, found a bunch of flyers, and ended up killing the opponent. All right, Splash Champ number 3 was someone named Dyer, and the learning that I got from him is actually something I'm going to let him tell in his own words. I have a lot of mixed feelings, honestly, about featuring these arenadirect events so heavily on my channel, because there's a healthy way to approach them and there's an unhealthy way to approach them. The unhealthy way to approach them is to expect to win a box a lot, to treat this as basically a money-making venture where you have a chance of paying whatever it is. 8,000 gems is like $30 US or something. Don't quote me on that. And then you can try to transmute that into a $400 box, and you can try to do that over and over and over again. And it basically becomes like slot machine thinking. I really want my channel to be a force in the community that pushes against that way of using these events. A way that you can do harm as a YouTuber who plays these events is by only posting the runs that go well. So I'll be honest with you, I actually have a certain pride that in our 5 attempts, we did not win a box, because that's the actual reality that most of you are experiencing when you run these events at home. In fact, if you look at the trophy rates of the best players in the world among people who have, say, 10 or more events, people like Lolaman and Ekin, people who win the most in these events win a box in maybe 1 out of every 4 of their runs. But those are people who every single time there's an arenadirect are jamming dozens of runs. And those are the most successful among those people in the world. Trophy rate maybe slightly understates it because 6 wins still gets you a box, but still. So unless you're a professional, the way that I like to think of these events is you're buying a movie ticket where there's a chance of winning a raffle. I think that's a healthier way than you're working at your job, and your job is playing the arenadirect. So with that in mind, here's what Dyer had to say after a really bad beat. I mean, seriously, I had definitely not only thought that he was solidly winning in the game, but we both had very good reason to think that his opponent's hand was completely empty. It really seemed like they had to top deck a specific card in order to win the game. And then suddenly a mythic rare came flying out of nowhere and ended his box run right there and then. Not to mention, he'd opened some of the best rares in the format. You can see a Superhero Civil War there. He chewed through, like, I don't know, some total 80 cards seen over the course of 3 games, using a Rick Jones to turbo his way to the Superhero Civil War. And he had never seen it. It was just hiding on the bottom of his deck all 3 games. So he would have had every reason to be salty. And here's what he said. But thanks so much for letting us watch. Really appreciate it. Do you have any parting thoughts for the audience?
Parting thoughts for the audience?
Yeah.
Yeah, come into playing these events with an open mind. Like, don't feel so pressured to have to perform well and get the box every time, right? Like, sometimes you're just gonna have a bad run, and it's better to just have fun and enjoy it instead of letting it bother you if you lose.
Those are serious words of wisdom right there. Thank you so much, Dyer. Couldn't have said it better myself. The Dyer hypothesis. Play with an open mind. I would say, in general, if you're playing Magic for any reason other than to have fun playing Magic, you probably shouldn't be playing Magic in that moment. All right, learning number 4. This one comes to us from Splashchamp, Avalanche. This one is short, sweet, and dense. Here, Avalanche is in his first main phase. The opponent has 0 flying blockers. I thought they were representing nothing. Some commenter, thank you commenter, pointed out they could be representing D-power, but essentially nothing very relevant. So we're just trying to maximize the amount of damage that we can do in the air, right? We're about to crack in for 10 damage, but we're currently conniving with a Trickster's Stratagem. We're trying to figure out what card we're going to discard. Either way, we're going to get a counter onto our 2/2 token, and so we're going to be cracking in for 11 damage, putting the opponent to 3. So the question is, which card do we discard? To me in this situation, it was a no-brainer. While I was commenting, my value brain that I just cannot turn off immediately goes, easy, discard the Supersuit, then you're going to play your Night Nurse, you're going to bring the Supersuit back to your hand, you just got an extra piece of cardboard on the battlefield. My default orientation is that if we haven't committed to an unlimited splash to have 8 different pieces of cardboard all interacting together to make some kind of ridiculous Rube Goldberg machine that's going to eventually explode on the opponent, then we're not playing Magic, right? But of course, that's not actually the best strategy a lot of the time. What Avalanche did in this spot that was so instructive for me is just ignore the value and maximize damage in the short term. We are in the position of such a mega beatdown. We have one goal and one goal only. I am going for the opponent's life total. So Avalanche, without even missing a beat, pitches a Night Nurse, puts a counter on the 3/3, or the 2/2 to make it a 3/3, then slaps the Supersuit onto that 3/3 to make it a 4/4, and goes in for 12 damage. This doesn't directly decrease the opponent's clock. It doesn't turn any of your attackers into individually lethal when it would not have been lethal otherwise. All 3 of our attackers were going to be lethal even if we pitched the Night Nurse in this, or pitched the Supersuit and cast the Night Nurse in this spot. But it does lower the opponent's life total by 1, and who knows, maybe they have some sequence of something, I'm not sure what, but maybe there's something they can do. Double D power after drawing an island, and then a supervillain lockup or something off the top. I don't know, but there's something they can do that just neutralizes our attacks for a little bit. That does mean that in the future, any 2-power flyer is going to be lethal. You know, a shield deployment drone or something. Watching Avalanche do this so seamlessly, just throw the Night Nurse away, ignore the tiny bit of incremental value, slap the Supersuit on, and go for that extra point of damage. It really made me wonder why my default orientation is so strongly value-oriented. We are absolutely crushing the opponent's life total with multiple flying attackers that they cannot block. They're tapped down, they're having mana problems. Why is my orientation to scrap for little bits of value on the battlefield that pretty much can't possibly make a difference the way that this game is going, and not to just attack the opponent's life total and keep the attack rolling? I think the lesson that I take from this is don't overthink and deviate from the plan. If your game plan is to win just by attacking and doing damage, try to orient yourself to think about plays that will help you attack and do damage. Playing the Night Nurse in that spot is kind of like mixing together 2 completely different plans for winning. And by doing that, you're probably decreasing your win chances by diluting the most likely plan that is going to help you win. If all of your plays point in the same direction, if I'm using every resource at my disposal to decrease the opponent's life total, then I'm more likely to win by decreasing the opponent's life total instead of some kind of scattershot approach. So thank you, Avalanche, for letting me watch how a more aggressive player thinks. Also, honorable mention to one of Avalanche's opponents who taught me the art of using Echo to copy Loki's ability, then using Loki's ability to copy the next 2 instants you cast, or make 2 copies of the next instant you cast, and then using that to put together a chain of 3 lightning strikes that cleared all of the attackers that were about to kill that person, which made me feel like this. But let's not dwell on that too much. All right, number 5, the final learning comes from a splash champ named Penny. Penny faced an interaction that I hadn't seen before and just played it so quickly that I had to think to catch up with what was going on. There was a spot where they had a frozen in ice in their hand. That's the aura that you can see up here. When it enters tap enchanted creature, and enchanted creature loses all abilities and can't be untapped. And the opponent had a Wiccan Rising Magician above it, the flying creature that when you cast a non-creature spell, exile another target non-land, non-token permanent, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. I was thinking actively about what Penny should target here just on the merits of what has stats, what's evasive, what can pose the biggest threat in the long run. But Penny just immediately, without missing a beat, snapped off Frozen and Ice onto Wiccan. And I had to think, why is Frozen and Ice going onto Wiccan immediately? And then I realized it's because Wiccan basically blanks Frozen and Ice if you put it on another creature. Because if your opponent is able to cast a non-creature spell, they can just exile the non-land, non-token permanent that you put Frozen and Ice on. Frozen and Ice is going to go to the graveyard, then their thing will come back at the beginning of the next end step. Very simple interaction, but it would be so easy to miss if you haven't played with these cards before. But the actual learning is probably something more like, you know, not Frozen and Ice the Wiccan per se, but more like practice makes perfect. I mean, it's very possible that Penny just saw this instantly and put the Frozen and Ice on the Wiccan because they computed in their head all of the ways that all of the cardboard here was interacting. But there's a lot of complicated cards going on here. Super Adaptoid itself is basically an entire 800-page novel of abilities. Spider-Woman plus Frozen and Ice is not exactly a simple interaction either. So my guess is Penny had either seen this exact situation before to be able to play it completely accurately and super quickly, or had at least seen similar cards interacting before, because we've seen versions of Frozen and Ice in basically every set since, I don't know, claustrophobia in Innistrad or whatever. And I guess Flickers from Urza's Destiny. So we've seen interactions like this for a while, and I'm guessing Penny has just seen things like this come up over and over again, and so is able to play it super accurately from experience. So if you're going to do a Win-a-Box run, getting in a lot of reps with the cards first really matters. So those are our 5 learnings. I actually will be hoping to run another Splash Champs event next weekend because we have a Win-a-Box event for Avatar. So keep an eye on the announcements tab in the community Discord. You can join that on my channel page. And I will also be giving an early bird announcement to our channel members. So if you join my channel, you will get advance notice about events like these and have a higher chance of being able to sign up. All right, so a big thanks again to the Splash Champs in the inaugural season of Splash Champs. And tomorrow I'll be back with another draft of Marvel Superheroes. So until tomorrow, have tons of fun playing Magic and don't be afraid to splash.